Good evening. This is Neil, W2NDG, starting the OMARC Sunday Night Science and Technology Net. Let's pause for any emergency or priority traffic. All right, nothing heard. Once again, this is Neil, W2N Technology Net. It looks like I have some people watching on the stream already. I want to make sure that the stream is actually going now. Anyway, we meet here every Sunday night at 8 p.m. to talk about science and technology, not always things that are ham radio related. And we do this on the repeater, sponsored by the Overlook Mountain Amateur Radio Club on 146.805 megahertz with a negative shift and a PL tone of 103.5 hertz. If you would like to participate in this net, you do not need to be a member of the Overlook Mountain Amateur Radio Club. You just need to hold a valid amateur radio license. Or, if you prefer, you can watch our stream on YouTube by searching for W2NDG, that's Whiskey 2 November Delta Golf, Science and Technology on YouTube. You'll find our live stream tonight. Let me pause. I'm just going to verify really quick that the stream is running tonight. After having issues with it last week, I just want to make sure, because I did get one of those funny messages that said that the stream had difficulty. That's what caused it to. Stream had difficulty. Yeah, that's what caused it. And there we go. We have the funny little echo that confuses everybody. All right, so let's close that before it makes my brain hurt, and we'll continue here. So I have an interesting topic for tonight. But as always, if somebody comes up with something more interesting, we can shift gears. But I think everybody will like tonight's topic. Let me drop. I'm pretty sure Jim isn't back yet, but let me double check. That's K2BHM. Jim, I don't think you're back in the valley yet. And if you are, you might not be ready to co-host. But I think I did hear you as recently as last night on the DMR. But Jim, if you're around, please come. Yeah, I think he's due back in a couple of days. Hopefully we'll have him next weekend. All right. So we get back into a little more of the way I was doing these things, with a little bit of backstory on tonight's subject first. And I'll tell you what sparked what we wanted to talk about tonight. I actually quizzed my wife, KD2CHE, for an idea, along a general topic. And I think we were both thinking in a similar frame of mind because of a piece of furniture. And let me explain. Jill, who loves putting together knockdown furniture, which, so much of this stuff is IKEA style assembly now. We bought a very interesting desk for her new home office. It's difficult to describe, but I can just say that, when I saw this thing advertised, and this was after looking at many different retailers that sell such things, and I stumbled on this. It just struck me as being very useful and very innovative. It's kind of like a drawer within a drawer within a desk. It's a very small thing when it's not in use, but it expands in such a way as to be extremely useful, especially if you're using it with a laptop or a computer with a separate keyboard. Just a really cool design. And that got me thinking about inventions and innovation. And Jill suggested one of the famous inventions when people talk about this type of thinking is the sewing machine. And those of you who know my wife know that it's definitely a subject that she's well versed on. Let me drop. we're not going to talk about sewing machines tonight, but just the general pattern of thinking that went into inventing it. And innovative thinking or out-of-the-box thinking is a common term sometimes used. And why does that apply to sewing machines? Well, the problem with the invention of the sewing machine was that people were trying to duplicate the mechanics of hand sewing. And any of us who have ever done it know that, there's an in and out and a through, and it's almost impossible to mechanically duplicate the motion that your fingers make for a number of different reasons. And the early inventors of the sewing machine kept failing. And even the earliest sewing machines that were invented used a type of stitch that, even though it worked, it did not lock. In other words, you could pull the entire stitch out if you found the end. Let me drop. So it was much later on that the invention was made. And once again, as many inventions, and we won't get into this tonight, were controversies regarding the patent and who actually invented it. But be that as it may, somebody did invent lock stitch sewing via machine, and it revolutionized just the whole concept of inventions. Really, it was an invention that really changed the way people do a lot of things. So I wanted to talk a little about innovative thinking and that kind of invention tonight. So the sewing machine was one example, and there are a few other things that you can look into. Let me drop. So there's some interesting other inventions. The Band-Aid or Adhesive Bandage is another one where somebody just, necessity is the mother of invention. A guy who worked for Johnson and Johnson and a wife who was constantly burning and cutting herself, and using a couple of other Johnson and Johnson products, invented the adhesive bandage, mostly adhesive tape and gauze pads, and just cut them and made them himself. And frequently, and with many of these inventions, it takes a while for somebody to recognize that a product is actually worth investing something else in. And I have a really funny one with that. Let me drop real quick, but I'll move on with this list. Once again, W2NDG on the OMARC Sunday Night Science and Technology Net, where we're discussing innovative thinking and thinking outside the box. There was a candy manufacturer who was tired of not being able to sell candy except locally in the summer because anything he shipped would melt, and came up with a hard candy, but didn't know how to create it in a small enough piece and uniform enough piece that it would look good and ship well. And he ended up using a machine that was designed for shaping and cutting pills. And by changing the die, basically kind of inside outing the die, created a round candy with a hole in the middle. And the Lifesaver was invented. The Frisbees, and a lot of people probably know this story. The name Frisbee actually applies to a bakery in New England. And the bakery discovered that people were playing this game with their pie plates, their pie tins that they served their pies in. And it became quite popular in the colleges, and somebody decided to start making the things out of plastic. And it was the Wham-O Corporation that actually trademarked the name, because people would yell Frisbee when they threw one of these pie plates. Possibly because if you weren't paying attention, you didn't want to get hit in the face with a metal pie plate. Let me drop. So some of it is thinking differently with something that exists but can't be translated into whatever modern terms you're trying to draw it into. Other times it's looking at something that already exists and trying to find a place where it might be useful. The inverse of that, and there are companies that do this, are companies that invent something that doesn't have a market and then attempt to create the market for it. I have one example of that, but I said I had a humorous one I wanted to bring up. That's the product that had a market and wasn't realized for many years. That's the Post-it note. The Post-it note was based on a failed invention from the 3M Corporation. It was a failed adhesive, and somebody discovered that even though the adhesive didn't work on a permanent basis or for really sealing anything from a safe point of view, it could be used to temporarily and safely stick things to other things. So they made pads of paper using this adhesive, and the Post-it note was used internally at 3M for a long time before somebody thought it might be something people might want. Imagine that. Let me drop. This next one I have no verification of. I've always tried to find it, but I can't find it, but it is definitely believable. And it has to do with the fact that when we eat baked potatoes in restaurants, they always come wrapped in foil. And when we ask people, why do you wrap baked potatoes in foil? And they say, well, because it's better. Potatoes cook better when they're wrapped in foil. Actually, they don't. A baked potato is much better when it's not wrapped in foil. It bakes better. It's a much more pleasant experience to eat with crispy skin, and I think they're kind of soggy when you bake them in foil. And the story behind this, another quick drop, is that one of the large aluminum manufacturers had developed a piece of machinery that would cut and package sheets of aluminum foil. There was a whole beginning to end process. So it would create the foil, cut the foil, and package the foil into these square sheets. And whatever original application that they had been contracted for dried up. The company either went elsewhere or decided that they didn't need it or found something else to do. So they decided to create a market for this product that they had made a machine for, and sent their sales reps out into the field to sell to every restaurant supply place the new method of baking potatoes. So I always wondered, because I remember at one point as a kid or older teenager, all of a sudden all the potatoes in the restaurant started coming in foil, and it was such a disappointment, especially from someone who grew up with their mom making potatoes in a stovetop potato baker, and they were wonderful. All right, so let me drop again here. And with that long lead in, and I do have some other things to support the discussion as we move along, but let's take check-ins, and then we can start running through the list and just kind of poke at everybody and see what they think about this sort of thing. There is quite a bit of information online about some of the best inventions, at least the ones that furthered thinking and progress. And some of us may even have ideas of things they would like to create. So please come and check in now. To check into the Science and Technology Net, you're going to give me your call sign, your first name, and your location. Please come now.
I'll be first. Answer USU. Fresno. KB2, GGF Matt in Kerhonkson. This is KB2RWW Bob. Mobile, only checking in for tonight. This is WA2RKN. Jerry, Hyde Park.
This is November 1, Oscar November Zulu, N1ONZ, Croton on Hudson. Just kind of listening to your interesting conversations.
All right. Well, so far we have N3EYQ Paul, KB2GGF Matt, KB2RWW Bob, who is mobile and probably won't be participating in the discussion, WA2RKN Jerry, and N1ONZ. Welcome. And I have you on QRZ as Robert. If you don't want to be called on, tell me, but if you want to be in the rotation, is it Robert or Bob?
More accustomed to Bob.
All right, Bob, thank you, and welcome to the net. Is there anybody else who'd like to check in before we start discussion?
I did have one more comment on the baked potato and the foil.
All right, who's that?
N1LNZ.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
My friend worked at Chuck's Steakhouse back in the 70s, and they would bake them, and he told me that's the way to bake them to get that steakhouse flavor is 500 degrees for 50 minutes foil wrapped. And they would come out crisp.
I guess it's possible, but you know, those of us who get potatoes in restaurants know that usually they don't, because I don't think they're doing them correctly. But it was neat. Is I had dinner at a local diner tonight, and the potato was definitely crispy and did not come in foil, which was nice. So I think some of them are going back to it. Anyway, all right. So there is, like I said, there's a number of lists, and I always love some of these lists. There's innovations that changed the world. I found from mentalfloss.com, suspension bridges, great one, and they talk about Roebling, which there is a town around his old steel mill in New Jersey, which is also just worth exploring because it was one of these planned communities and a really neat place. Toilets, not invented by, but refined by Thomas Crapper, and that is true. The Sony Walkman, definitely, something that changed the way we look at and deal with music and entertainment. There's a few others in here. The pizza box and pizza table. So the pizza table is really the innovative invention here, which is that little tiny thing that looks like an end table or a patio table that they stick on top of your pizza so it doesn't stick to the lid. X-rays, duct tape, barcodes. Barcodes are really interesting because if you read about the invention, the code that went into the barcodes and how they actually work was inspired by Morse code. So I'd like to see how that translates from one to the other, but really neat stuff. Seat belts, microwave oven, can opener, Velcro, air conditioning, radio. So these are just some of them. There's so much of this, but let's go up to the top of the list and just tell me of an invention that you think, demonstrated innovative thinking that you've always been impressed with. Something that you think was important or innovative or just something that you've always been impressed with. So, Paul, we'll start with you, N3EYQ. What are your thoughts on this?
No idea. I'm clueless on this one. Microwave oven. There you go. That's where you like you. The popcorn in the microwave. That's what brought that on.
Well, and definitely radio related, right? There's a lot of similarity there into to getting them to work. Anyone of a certain age, grew up when it was innovative and different and new, and not everybody had them. So I'm 56 years old. I can remember being a little kid, and my aunt and uncle from Manhasset, Long Island, were the ones that always had everything first. Uncle Ted had the first Betamax that I ever saw, the first digital watch I ever saw, and they had it was like an Amata radar range or a Litton microwave in their kitchen. It didn't get used for a whole lot of things, but it just always amazed us that something could get hot without heat. So it's a cool invention. All right, Matt, KB2GGF. Give me an invention that impresses you or fascinates you.
Good evening, Neil. KB2GGF here. And good evening, everybody on the net. It's a pretty mundane one, but it's a pretty useful one, and that's the Ziploc Freezer Bag. Before that, there really weren't good bags that you could freeze stuff in. It would always get freezer burned and frosted, but the Ziploc bag works pretty well. I don't know who thought of that or how, but it's kind of cool. So that was my thought. Back to net, KB2GGF.
Well, thanks, Matt. That'd be a good one to look up too. I grew up in a house without them. Mom wouldn't invest in Ziploc bags because they cost more. At least with the sandwich size ones. I mean, later on, I think probably when I was almost out of the house, she started buying them for the freezer bags. But never bought Ziploc sandwich bags. It was always those fold over ones, the ones that you have to turn the top part inside out, like when you pair socks. It's probably why I never had to learn how to pair socks because I already knew how to close sandwich bags. But yeah, Ziploc bags. Later on, I think she started buying them, but that was the thing with Mom. Frugal to the ends of the earth. There was a drawer in the kitchen that had twist ties in it. Leftover twist ties. And I remember one time that there were some college-age kids on our street or somewhere in our neighborhood that were having a scavenger hunt. Let me drop. And they came to the door with a list. And when they got to purple twist tie, I knew that we would have one. And we did, because Mom had them in every color you could imagine, including some bicolor ones. Anyway, Ziploc bags. I'm going to look that one up. Bob was mobile, but he's watching on YouTube, I guess, and sent me the solid state transistor. I mean, the transistor, oh my God, basically without that, we wouldn't have so many things because modern integrated circuits, we don't call them that anymore. We usually just call them chips. But like the microprocessor in your phones and your computers and everything, it had millions of transistors in them, and we wouldn't have been able to design them or figure out how all this works without that invention. And we've talked about the basics of that device before. Let me drop. So one of my best visualizations of it as a kid, when I was reading a book on basic electronics, showed water. And I always think it's a really good way to start with the basics of electronics is to explain things in terms of water and water flow. And it showed a trough, like a canal with water flowing through it. And it had a gate. And that gate was controlled up and down by a smaller trough or tube that came into the larger one. And as water flowed through that, it had a little tiny gate that would raise the larger gate. So basically, that's it. You have a flow of electricity from point A to point B, controlled by a smaller point C. That's an oversimplification of it, but it was an innovation that caused us to abandon hollow state technology, tubes, which do have some advantages, and we won't get into that. But it allowed for what we have today. I mean, computers used to occupy something the size of a house when they were invented to get all the tubes to fit. Let me drop. And transistors allowed us to shrink that and use less power, much less power, as time went on. I have an ad from a technical journal over my desk at work, and it's from, I think, an RCA internal corporate journal. But whatever it's from, it's an RCA ad, and it shows transistors, and I think they're sitting on top of a silver dollar, and they're small, of course, obviously, and there's a tube next to them. And the title is, "Are you prepared for the high price of miniaturization?" And it was an anti-transistor ad. Great stuff. So, Bob, thank you. Excellent one. Jerry, WA2RKN. Somehow, I can't wait for your answer. What's your invention you want to bring up tonight?
Well, let's find out. Various thoughts have been coming and going through my head here as various speakers have been speaking. I think for the hands of the individual, the microprocessor probably put the multiplication of brain at the individual's fingertips. You got the motor to multiply muscle power, cars to extend your legs. The microprocessor put that into the hands of you and I. You could build your you could build your own mind extension. And if you hadn't realized this, or were not aware of this, Bell Labs, part of Ma Bell, AT&T, patented a transistor. Yes, they sure did. And they declined to take royalty payments on the patent. Let that sink in for a moment. They decided not to collect royalties on the transistor patent deliberately. Can you imagine how different society and industry would be right now if they had hacked the transistor? And I've been alive in the transition from tubes through microprocessors here, and wow, yeah, some more of that, please. Very nice. And you mentioned various inventions, Velcro in particular, as I think we extrapolated that from the sticky briars and little seed ponds that would stick to you and clothing. I mean, that was been around for a while. How long did it take us to figure that simple thing out? Velcro. How about this? What do you suppose would be these little things that you would be interested in that were developed by, say, aliens? What little gadgets and gizmos and other products might they have that we hadn't even thought of? WA2RKN, back to net.
This is W2NDG on the OMARC Sunday Night Science and Technology Net. Jerry, thank you. And of course, the first thing that comes to mind with that last statement is Men in Black. Oh, there's so many funny things in that movie. There's been a number of novels over the years, and you and I discuss things like this frequently, but where the premise is that some of that technology did come from aliens. Always an interesting subject. But yeah, I mean, obviously, there's things we haven't thought of yet. And um, there's a lot of fiction that covers that topic. And one that always pops into my mind for some reason, and I don't know why. We all have that one little thing that sticks in our mind, and we can never figure out why. Um, is from the movie Colossus, a Forbin project, which is about a computer that takes over the world. And when the Colossus computer syncs up with its Russian counterpart, it starts going through basic math and teaching the other computer how to think. And then when it runs out of math problems, it invents a new math. And that always, I just always thought that was so cool. And we all think, well, math is math. Math is finite. There is no new math. And my answer to that is there? Is math done? Is there nothing else to invent with math? Or is there still some other level that we haven't thought of yet? Because that's what happened with calculus, right? We thought we were done with math and there was more. So maybe there is another level beyond that. Just interesting thoughts. That's all. Jerry, always good brain stimulating subjects. And yes, Velcro was on one of the lists. Definitely a good one. All right. N1ONZ, if you're still with us. Bob from Croton-on-Hudson. What's an invention other than baked potatoes that fascinates you? All right, N1ONZ, are you still with us? I can come back to you later, if not. All right, that's fine. So right now we're going to take some additional check-ins. If you haven't been following along, we're talking about innovation and thinking outside the box and inventions that either intrigued you or you think changed the world or something you think needs to be invented, anything along those lines. If you'd like to participate in tonight's discussion, please come now with your call sign, your first name, and your location. All right, that's fine. We will continue with our group here tonight. There were some quotes that I stumbled on while I was doing my research. And it's one of those things. If you know of a particular person, you want to mention a character from history that you feel really changed things and had a lot to offer, innovation. I'm going to mention just these quotes, which I thought were really cool. Thomas Edison, I have not failed. I have just found 10,000 ways that won't work. And some of these, I mean, they say that they're attributed to somebody, some of them are old enough that we don't know if we can prove that. But Isaac Newton supposedly said, if I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants. Walt Disney is attributed to it's kind of fun to do the impossible. And it's an interesting way of looking at things because, he definitely pulled off a different type of innovation, innovation in the entertainment of people and innovation in the science of entertainment. So, Albert Einstein, logic will get you from A to B. Imagination will take you everywhere. Interesting thoughts. Steve Jobs, creativity is just connecting things. Interesting view from him. Leonardo da Vinci, learning never exhausts the mind. I hope you all appreciate learning as much as I do. I am an information addict. I want to know. Let me try. So on this next round, let's talk about people. Is there a person that you admire from the world of innovation? And why? What did they do? Paul, N3UIQ.
Oh, you just throw me in there, and I wasn't ready. I listened to DMR and a few other things. Sounds interesting, said we. N3UIQ.
That's all right, Paul. Pop up at the end if you think of someone, but yeah, it's looking for a person, an inventor, an innovator that you admire. We'll move on to Matt, KB2GGF. Matt, give me a name. And apparently, the Ziploc bag was invented by Romanian-born inventor Stephen Osnit, Harvard class of 1945.
I bet he did all right, too. Cool. So far as inventions and an innovator, it's a name that came up earlier today in a discussion I had on the repeater, actually. And someone I greatly admire for many reasons, but not the least for his inventions and his curiosity, and that's Benjamin Franklin. Invented many things that we use. Very smart guy. Back to that, KB2GGF.
Yes, Ben Franklin. Smart guy, quite the rascal. There's a lot of great Ben Franklin stories. And of course, as kids, a lot of us, were taught the misnomer that he invented electricity by capturing it with a kite. Obviously that wasn't true. But he did manage to do experiments that proved that lightning was simply electricity in a different form. But yes, there is a whole list of things that he invented. Some pretty mundane things that we don't even think twice about anymore. But Ben was a very early innovator and has been recognized as such in many ways. So cool stuff. All right. I know we had Bob here on chat. He did throw something else as far as an invention that he admired, but he hasn't come up with a person. So I'm not sure if he's still listening, but he mentioned another item invention that definitely has changed the world, especially recently, and that's the LED. Originally, LEDs served the purpose of indicating and displaying, but went on to be illumination. And even though that started early on, it wasn't efficient enough to actually work. I want to talk about a book real quick while we're on this subject. Let me drop. I think I brought this book up once before on here. I have since ordered a copy of it, and I have it. I don't think I have it within reach to hold up to the camera, but it is A Century of Wonders. A Century of Wonders, 100 Years of Popular Science. It was produced on the centennial of the Popular Science magazine, and it talks about 100 years of innovation. And there is a chapter on lighting, starting with arc lamps and going to Edison's lamp invention and ending with LEDs and fluorescent panels. And at that point, they were speculating on the future of LEDs. And of course, we now live in that future. It's always cool when things come about that we've heard about. But I definitely recommend that book. Great coffee table book. It's a hardcover size, but a good book to leave around for people to page through. A Century of Wonders, 100 Years of Popular Science. Probably have to buy it used. I don't think it's still in print. But all right, let me drop. Before we get to Jerry here. We have someone on YouTube who doesn't have a call sign. Hopefully he will sometime in the near future. I even forwarded him information about our classes coming up. But my son Alec has put forth Robert Moog, the father of the synthesizer, or the, of course, electronic analog synthesizer, and definitely an innovation in the music we listen to. And those of us who are into progressive rock have definitely heard plenty of his invention. But good one, Alec. Another person from that business that I got a chance to meet in person, who is referred to frequently as a futurist, is Raymond Kurzweil. Spent a lot of time in that business, but now he just pretty much dabbles in anything futuristic. I once got the pleasure of speaking with Raymond Kurzweil when he was a guest speaker for one of our events at the hospital. Really cool guy, and I recommend looking into the things that he talks about. All right, up next is WA2RKN, Jerry. Jerry, give me a name.
Cheeseburger. I don't know. Can you really pick one and categories and all like that? Feynman, Sabin, Salk, Ford, Musk. How about Elon Musk? Man made a lot of money, but you know what? He's putting it to use for all of mankind. Not like Jeff Bezos. I don't know. It's nice to see that people have the ability can help us all in some measure like that. Seems like lately the government is doing such a good job of investing in long-term projects like that. They've cut back NASA, et cetera, et cetera. Whatever. WA2RKN, back to that.
Well, I don't know. I think if you look at Bezos a different way, if you draw that graph out with the efficiency of his operation and how fast things get here, personally, I think he's on track to invent the transporter, because we're almost at the point where we're going to order something and it will just appear in the house if you draw that line out on that graph. But in all seriousness, yeah, there's some good names on that list. And, who are the modern innovators? Elon Musk is, does he sometimes engage the mouth before the brain? Oh, yeah. But gets him in trouble sometimes. But a lot of famous innovators through history have been like that. And they're not always people. Elon's come up with some really cool stuff. And I like to think that it's not just because he's an innovator, he's a visionary and surrounds himself with the right innovators also. So, neat guy. And yeah, some others that you mentioned in there. Jonas Salk. Jonas Salk, of course, is known for the polio virus. And he kind of fell out of the public eye after polio. There was some brief controversy as to whether or not his vaccine was better than another one, and he even got accused of trying to collect fame and fortune from somebody else's invention or discovery, which wasn't the case. He never wanted any fame or fortune from it at all. Let me drop. What brought Jonas Salk back out into the public eye was the AIDS virus, and spent his final years doing some really heavy AIDS vaccine research. And it was there's an article that I read when I was on the road as a dental product salesman years ago that had speculated that the reason why he came out of retirement to research AIDS was because he felt that the competing vaccine, which got used for a number of years, and then now we're back pretty much to one that's more like his, may have accidentally created and released the AIDS virus through research in Africa. The article was pulled, was never published again, and there were some really heavy lawsuit threats brought about for the guy who wrote that article. But God, it was very believable, I'll tell you that. Unfortunately, Jonas passed away before he really came up with anything, but it was nice to see him devote his expertise to something like that again. Read up on him. Interesting guy. Let me drop. All right. We had somebody else check in here. And I'm thinking this might be Double A Ron from right up the road here. As he says, what's up? Anyway, we're at the end of the list, but we're going to check to see if Bob N1ONZ is around again real quick. If not, I'm going to mark him as checked out. Bob, did you come back to us from Croton-on-Hudson?
Indeed. I just had to get the dishes done before I got scolded from the wife.
Was it scalded or scolded? We were talking about innovators, people in general. If you had a favorite one or one you wanted to bring up, and who and why.
Okay. I thought innovations at one point it was innovators in themselves. No, I really don't have it. I had a few subject things that innovations that came up that to mind that were common items now and things like that. But
Oh, that's fine. Sometimes, like I said, some of the inventions are the mundane things we don't even think about. But if you have any that you want to bring up, just throw them at me. And if not, we'll continue the subject for a little bit here before we end the net tonight. But anything else you want to throw into the conversation, go ahead. If not, we'll run back into something else.
some not really geared to where you're at. I'm probably best off waiting for the next net and preparing myself. So I'll let things go back to net control.
No problem. And yeah, you're welcome. Every Sunday night at 8. Usually I have a co-host, but he's been resting it up on an island, an undisclosed location. And Jim will be back soon. And he always has plenty of comments and information to offer the conversation. We have another comment here. Oh, yes, it is Aaron, KC2NDA, who checked in on YouTube. RWW says he can't remember the name, but when he first started working, he was working landscaping for the person that invented the Pogo Stick and one of the people who invented the transistor. Cool. Very cool. There was a teacher at the high school when I was a little kid who was near retirement who had worked on the Manhattan Project. Yeah, and he said you'd be surprised how many innovators or famous people live in the Hudson Valley area. Actually, I wouldn't. There's so many famous people that ended up here. It's always interesting. Talking about who are the famous people who invented things or hold patents on things. There's definitely celebrities, who invented things, and that's always an interesting topic as well. But anyway, this is an interesting conversation. I'm going to roll back to Paul N3EYQ, see if he came up with a name for us. Did you come up with something, Bob or Paul, or you still deep in DMR land there? Well, we have lost Paul to digital. It's the competing forum. Anyway, that's fine. Anyway, Paul, I'll come back to you one more time before the end here, but we're going to just anything else on tonight's topics for the remaining check-ins, and that's first up would be Matt, KB2GGF, and you YouTubers can throw stuff at me too.
Well, I think it was Aaron's comment that he used to do some landscaping for the man who invented the Pogo Stick. Sort of put me in mind of my own brushes with greatness. My father's friend, John, his friend John's father was an advertising man, and he would be the age of my grandfather or your grandfather, Neil, around then. And he was an advertising man who invented BO. He invented the advertising gimmick BO for body odor to sell deodorant. So that's my brush with greatness. Back to Ned.
There's a certain amount of humor in that, introducing, this man as the man who invented BO, the father of BO. Oh, God. Neat stuff, though. Brushes with greatness. Other than Ray Kurzweil, I haven't met people from that world, technology world. Inventors from there. I rub elbows with some pretty high-level medical researchers. One guy who is one of the top stem cell guys in the world. Some really neat people who end up at my place of work. And as far as, I don't know, am I related to anybody famous, who actually did something? Jill's father designed instruments and devices that were in use on our submarines and in very important places in the world. In fact, when you see films of our nuclear subs, the gauges and many of those panels were designed by her father. I had a brother-in-law, ex-brother-in-law now, but my first wife's brother invented a number of things for the Ethicon division of Johnson & Johnson that were some really well-used medical items, things that are still used today. So his team and him specifically, of course, when you invent things like that for a corporation, you're attributed to that invention, but it's not yours to take with you if you leave. It's the way all those things work. So, all right. And it was Bob, KB2RWW, who mentioned the Pogo Stick. Let me drop real quick. My son brought up Tom Schultz. Tom Schultz, or the founding member, and depending on how you look at it, if you know the history of the band, at some point the only member of the band Boston. Tom was an engineering grad who basically was into music and engineered his music and did incredible multi-tracking in his own home and came up with the sound that was that band. And he hired some musicians. Obviously, he didn't sing. He hired the lead singer that became the trademark sound. But all of that was engineered by him. But Alec brought him up because he has invented things for the music business, including a little amplifier. I think the Pig Nose amp. I'm not sure. Alec can verify here, but I'm pretty sure that was one of his contributions. And there's a number of other things. And I think it was Joe Walsh and Peter Entwistle from The Who. I could have that wrong, but it was two musicians who invented the talking guitar. Heard on, of course, the famous Peter Frampton hit, So anyway, yeah, rub elbows with some of these people. Let me drop. My son had a college professor who was one of the founders of the Java language. He wrote the entire parallel processing library for it. Very cool. And yes, he says, yeah, the Pig Nose amp. It's a little practice amp that Tom Schultz invented, holds the patent on and sells. So, all right. Thanks, Matt. Well, we're going to go next. Another comment from Aaron here, but Jerry, WA2RKN, anything else you want to bring up before we close things out here tonight?
Well, who among us is so dead that we have not heard switched on Bach on the synthesizer? WA2RKN, back to that.
So, switched on Bach, Kraftwerk, thinking of all the, really heavy on the Moog, of course, all the early Rick Wakeman stuff. But when I was a kid, my brother Lee had a cassette that he bought called Everything You Always Wanted to Hear on the Moog. And it was a cassette of popular tunes and themes played on Moog synthesizers. For those of you who maybe haven't heard some of the names and music that I've suggested, one of those, which I really recommend listening to if you've never heard it, is Rick Wakeman's album Journey to the Center of the Earth. And it's one of those albums you really have to listen to with headphones on, beginning to end, in one sitting. But very good if you like that type of music, that progressive rock with a very synthesizer heavy. And other one, of course, Kraftwerk's Autobahn, which is a song. It's the name of the album as well, but it's a song that takes up an entire side of an album. And great background music. Let me drop. Aaron wants to know, where's the radio shelf and the glowing call sign in the background? And well, I do this in my office. And although I do have an IC 7300 to my right side and an IC 7100 as well, the 7300 is going downstairs into the workshop, which is also going to be the shack. And down there, I do have some signage, not glowing, but some really cool stuff that my wife got me, including a clock. And that's where the 7300 is destined to go, along with a bunch of other things. The 7100 will remain here in the office because it has that tiny control head, and I can still keep HF in my office. But I do this in my home office because it's usually where I have better lighting and where the computer is, and I don't have a good antenna lead running down into the workshop at the moment. But that will change soon. Anyway, but thanks for asking, Aaron. Let me drop. N1ONZ, I know we caught you before there, but do you have any final comments for the net before we take any other closing comments? All right, that's fine. I think his previous comments were pretty much his final comments. And Bob, if you are still listening, we will catch you again on another night as we start to get back into some of the pre-thought out topics, which Jim and I sometimes come up with. We may put them up on our website, one of the two websites that we manage, which is OMARCclub.net. OMARCclub.net, or the 835, it's called 835 on the 805.net, 835 on the 805.net, and that is a website for our morning net, which is 8:35 every morning. And now I don't have to mention those websites again when I close things out. All right. So we went through the entire list, and I've been getting some comments on YouTube tonight, which is great. Thank you, guys. And open now. Anybody else who wants to throw out anything to this discussion, please just hit me with your call sign and anything else you want to bring up before we close it out. All right, that's fine. I want to hit a couple of ham radio related topics real quick. Some interesting things that happened. One is that Hans Summers, the owner and head engineer at QRP Labs, is releasing a new radio tomorrow morning at 1800 hours Zulu. That is a multi-band digital kit. So it's a 5-watt, 4-band FT8 radio, if you want to look at it that way. But it will do other modes that do not require phase shift keying, which would be PSK, or multi-tonal keying. So any monotonal sideband style digital mode can be recreated by it. It is a kit. I think it's $60 and $20 for a professional case along with it. But it's something we've all been waiting for a while. He has a limited number of them in the first run because he's having some supply issues, as are we all. But yes, tomorrow at, I believe, 1800 hours, the kits will go on sale. That's, once again, 1800 Zulu. So you would subtract 4 from that to get our local time this time of year. Anyway, that was that news, and I had several comments from people who do a lot of HF work who have noticed that the bands are starting to come alive again. And though I have definitely seen this as more and more nights where I see some activity on 15 meters and 17 meters picking up. Oh, Aaron wants a link to the kit. I'll send you that, Aaron. I'll put it in the chat here before we close things out. So let me drop, and I am going to look for a link to that. Probably have to search my trash, unfortunately, but the kit is called the QDX, I believe, for QRP Labs digital transceiver. So, all right, I'll put that link in the chat. Let me drop for a moment. All right, I'll put that in the chat. Aaron, just let me know if you saw it. I know sometimes the chat doesn't work right, so just verify that you got the link. Does anybody want that who is listening?
Yeah. I want it all. I want it now.
All right. Well, I'll add it to the post on the 835 on the 805 and on the Facebook post, but I will speak the URL if anybody actually wants to write it down, and that is shop.qrp-labs, QRP-LABS labs.com, shop.qrp-labs.com/QDX, and that's Quebec Delta X-ray, QDX. I think if you just did a Google search for QRP Labs QDX, you'll find a bunch of links to it. But will be available for order Monday, 11th of October, 2021 at 1800 Zulu. I wish everybody luck in getting one if you want one. Hans's kits are wonderfully documented and not always easy to build, but his documentation makes it second to none, and his support is second to none. So let me drop. All right. And before we close things out here, were there any last-minute check-ins to the net?
KC2 UVP, I did chime in with Snyder Mark.
That's all right. It wasn't that snide. Oh. Good to hear you, Mike. Anyway, that's it for me tonight. And we're going to close out the net. You have been listening to the Sunday night OMARC Science and Technology Net. This net appears every Sunday night at 8 p.m. here on the repeater of the Overlook Mountain Amateur Radio Club on 146.805 megahertz. You do not need to be a member to participate in this net, but we encourage you to come and become a member of our club. We're a friendly club, open to ideas and innovation, as we were demonstrating tonight. And if you'd like to investigate how to become a member, you can find us at omarcclub.org. I believe I said .net before, which was wrong. It is omarcclub.org. And I'll give you information on who we are and how to join. Let me drop. And please join us for the nets that occur on this frequency. Every morning at 8:35 a.m., we have the 8:35 on the 8:05 net, which is a roundtable casual net, not a directed net. And it was a net that was started at the beginning of the COVID pandemic, so we hams could remain social because we do enjoy being social. But it was a net to make sure that everybody was okay and in good spirits and had what they needed. Every night at 6:30 p.m., a similar net, the 6:30 check-in net, hosted by a rotating cast of OMARC members, is similar to the 8:35 net, but a directed net, making sure that everybody is okay and has what they need again. Come on, tell us how your day went, what you did. Did something go wrong? Do you need help with something? You're looking for something? And that's about it. It's a lot of fun and runs pretty quick, and as Dave says, goes well with supper. Every Thursday night at 8 p.m., Dave K2GLV, is it 8 or 7? I may have that wrong, hosts the Thursday night technical net, where we look for a topic, a troubleshooting topic, a technical topic, usually ham radio related, but always technology related. If a topic does not appear during the first round, Dave spins the topic wheel and comes up with one for us. We've definitely done some great troubleshooting on that net, and really do enjoy having people check in and bring some good ideas to us. So, and we have one more net to bring up. The Ulster Northern Duchess Readiness Net, or UnderNet, is currently on Tuesdays at 8 p.m. And that is a net where we are basically practicing for the Aries and Races eventuality that we want to get involved in. Ham radio has always been a great emergency preparedness group, and when everything else fails, our stuff still works. So this is a net demonstrating the functionality and the capability of ham radio in an emergency situation. Currently, there's been a lot of talk about the transfer of picture format using only HTs and cell phones. And your cell phone does not require a network connection in order to make this work. So this is a way during an emergency, sending an important picture of something and getting it through to the proper people. Even if it's a picture of a note that you wrote or a sign, something like that. And it works, and it's pretty cool. So come check us out on Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. And that's it for me. I did have a long weekend, and it's back to work tomorrow, even though it's Columbus Day. So everybody have a great week, and we'll be back here again next Sunday night. We now return this repeater to its regular use. As usual, I'll hang out for 5 or 10 minutes if anybody wants to chat. But thank you all for checking in tonight, and thanks for the YouTube activity tonight. It's nice to get some activity from that side of things. So everybody have a good night. We'll catch you next week. W2NDG listening.
W2NDG, KB2GGF.
Hey, Matt. Let's see. You haven't built a Hans Summers kit yet. You've been doing a lot of other ones, though.
No, not yet, and I haven't yet done anything digital. I have not begun to explore that. I've read a little bit about it, but I haven't built anything or operated there. So I'm not going to try to get this one, but I've been reading about it, and it looks mighty interesting. But yeah, I every once in a while when I'm drifting off to sleep, I'll look through their catalog of things they sell and say, oh, geez, that's kind of neat. So I will be getting something from them eventually. Just wanted to give you an update on the NFED situation.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, because there's very useful information for me, who also has one.
Well, I just begun to explore it, but have made some interesting progress, I guess you'd say. First I took the two long counterpoise, which, I think was resonant on 20 meters. And at first I on the ground and went inside and tested, and that had the effect of killing everything. It just had no reception. I didn't even bother trying to transmit with it. I just said, nah, that's not good. So went back outside, and I cut that coil off and ended up with about a 12-foot piece of counterpoise. And that the reception came up, but it still didn't work so great. So I said, okay, one more experiment. This is just a quickie thing. And got a alligator clip jumper, and I stripped off the end of the counterpoise, and I direct grounded it to a ground stake, to a ground rod, and went inside, and lo and behold, my reception came up drastically. Background noise dropped, and I can tune effectively across 80 through 10 with the exception of 20. Cannot tune up 20 for beans with that. So I got more to do. I still have All right, went long. I still haven't messed with the choke at all, but that's what I found so far.
Well, when I was in Long Island, the last place we lived at there, I had the NFED in the backyard, and I had extended it a little further than I'd had at the previous place because I had more room. And I had a counterpoise, similar setup with what you're talking about, with an alligator clip at the 9-to-1. And what I used to do was to either leave it as just a plain counterpoise or connect it to a water pipe ground, depending on what band I was on. Because on some bands, it tuned up fine with just the basic counterpoise, and on other bands, it tuned up better with the counterpoise grounded. So there's nothing wrong with having something you can switch in and out.
And you make me think I need to do a finer chart of what does and doesn't work with and without the grounding of the counterpoise. So there's just so many parameters to explore with this setup, things I can vary. It's going to take me a while, but some interesting results. And, as I have it set up right now, it is functional. I made some good contacts today, got some DX, and, so I'm a happy camper, but I got a lot of research to do and refinement. But your point is, as I take it, I really should refine my research and keep a better record of it, because I'd like to know what I'm doing.
No, it's okay. And antennas don't always behave the way we want them to, and a lot of it is environment related. There can be numerous things affecting their performance, and if you really want some entertainment sometime, I know I think you said, well, you're not a Facebook person, but create an account, um, just so you can view things, and join a couple of the ham radio groups, and just so you can watch some of the activity. And somebody will come on and say, could somebody recommend a good antenna for 80, 40, and 20 meters, and watch the explosion of answers and the arguments that will ensue as the G5RV guys, swear that NFEDs are garbage, and the NFED guys swear that the G5RV is the worst antenna ever designed, and on and on and on and on. And you've heard me talk about this before. I had that dissertation from a guy who insisted that the magnetic loop was didn't work. That magnetic loops didn't work. Like 20 minutes he went on with me about that, and my only response to him was my logbook disagreed with him. But anyway, I realized I left the YouTube stream running and there's still people watching, so I'll leave it running for a little while.
Oh man, I was going to talk about Tangerine Dream and their album Phaedra, but I won't.
No, that's all right. We've had a few of those. Wow, yeah. The Moog artists. I have a friend. He's actually a friend of my brothers, my older brother Lee and my late brother Paul. And this is a guy who came to work for my family years ago and ended up, being a well-respected manager in the dental products industry. But we always talked about music. He was a fantastic music critic and collector, and really had an ear and loved, finding things that were a little off the beaten path. Let me drop for a second. W2NDG, not on the Science and Technology Net, but still recording. Mark and I would exchange all sorts of cassettes, like mixtapes, usually with no information as to what we were listening to, and then the idea was you would make notes on it. But he once loaned me an album, and he said it was the first album in his life that he had ever bought entirely because of the cover. And it's an album by a 70s prog rock band called Triumvirate, and the title of the album is Illusions on a Double Dimple. And the cover of the album is just white background showing a mouse climbing out of a chicken egg. And it's just very well shot and composed, and it's a neat cover. But Triumvirate was one of those, early Yes era prog rock bands, but their leader, composer, founder, basically most of the band was all synthesizers and keyboards, and it was just a very keyboard heavy band, but definitely interesting stuff, kind of like a cross between Kraftwerk and Yes with poor German translation, because some of the lyrics were not that great. Anyway, yeah, so when you mentioned that, I just had to think about that.
Yeah, I don't remember that band, but when you describe the album cover, I have definitely seen that. Maybe in one of those coffee table books of album covers or something. I remember seeing the mouse crawling out of the egg. But yeah, there were so many prog bands at that time. But some interesting stuff to listen to. I was just listening to some new NEU, the German rock band, which did sort of hypnotic trance type stuff. Great fun.
Yeah, and probably a dangerous job for me to have as a big fan of music, but my second actual job, other than working for my own family, I think I was still 16 when I started there. Might have been 17, but it was at Record World in Hudson Valley Mall. And they gave us a great employee discount, and my record collection expanded greatly when I worked there. But yeah, I was into all of it. And even before I got that job, what was interesting, Record World at the time, one of the things they prided themselves in was their sales crew, because it was a place where you could go and talk about music with the employees, and they would recommend things. So my job interview was a rock trivia quiz.
It's not bad. Yeah, I used to shop there all the time myself, so definitely was into record collecting. Still have far too many, but yeah, that was fun.
So much of this that comes up in daily discussion. So anyway, I do need to think about winding down here, and I already did some cleanup, but Jill is done putting together her amazing desk. Same company that made hers. There's this multi-level, crazy-looking tower thing. It's like a desk with all these crazy offshoot side tables and multi-levels that I saw in the same listing as hers. And I thought that would be an amazing desk for the office here, where I could have, my office computer and large monitor on the main desk, and then have my radios off on these little side pods. Really cool. So I might grab one of those. And very reasonable. And the place I found all this was Sam's Club. And I didn't, once I looked for it by brand and name, I was able to find it on Amazon and places like that. But just searching using specific keywords for, certain types of office desks, they didn't come up. They didn't come up until after I knew what they were called. So, but definitely neat furniture. And all right, I'm going to go. Today was what Jill and I call the diner anniversary. 13 years ago tonight, we went out on our first date to a diner. And as Jill says, 13 years ago, a wonderful man came to visit and never left. And our 9th wedding anniversary is about to come up. So always a fun night. We went to the diner and had some food tonight. I'm going to go. Thanks for the chat, Matt. And I'm going to end the YouTube stream right now. Everybody have a good night.